Exposed: how my $25,000 wedding ring was sold for a sister's dream vacation during my recovery. Sarah could hardly believe the headlines anymore, but when reality hit, it felt like a punch to the gut. The car accident had stolen her independence, leaving her tethered to this quaint town and a family that hovered like worried moths around a flickering light. Each physical therapy session solidified her limitations, while every family dinner felt like a reminder of the love and stability that once surrounded her, a stark contrast to the hollow ache within. But she wasn't fretting about broken bones or the months ahead. She was consumed by the gnawing thought that her sister, Jessica, envied her life. As Sarah's recovery slogged on, the pain became a friend, lingering just long enough to remind her of what had been taken. She found herself questioning everything: her job as a nurse, once her passion; her marriage, once a bedrock of support; her identity, now wrapped in bandages. A twisted irony suffocated her thoughts. Why did every success come with a shadow of her sister's unachieved dreams? The longer she pondered, the more her heart curved into the dark shadows of doubt. Was love even thicker than betrayal? Out of the blue, snatches of Jessica's laughter cut through the clutter of Sarah's mind, reminiscent of days filled with light and ambition. But Jessica, the aspiring artist, had quietly slipped into resentment. Jealousy cloaked in awkward silences replaced their once sisterly bond. Tonight, Sarah could feel that energy in the air as they sat at the dinner table with their parents, watching Jessica's eyes dart toward her wedding ring resting on the table. The heirloom was once a symbol of love and hope, now a target. Dark clouds of unease brewed in Sarah's chest. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the evening unfolded, Sarah caught sight of Jessica exhibiting an unusual eagerness to leave the table early, a nervous energy bubbling just beneath the surface. It flickered like a flame, threatening to go out but desperate for exposure. Nothing would have prepared Sarah for the gut-wrenching moment that followed. With whispered abandon, Jessica confessed she was leaving town for a vacation, the allure of an artistic sanctuary calling out to her. In her hand, the very ring Sarah cherished twisted into a pawn for those whims. Betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. It sank into her bones, a paralyzing realization. Time stretched as Sarah grappled with the choice of confronting her sister, a confrontation that could topple their family's fragile equilibrium. Her grip tightened, muscle tension escalating with each breath as racing thoughts spiraled downward. Could she reclaim the life that Jessica was so willing to abandon her for? Blood ties felt like chains, and the burden of loving her sister collided with the urge to break free. The anguish boiled until she feared it would burst forth, consuming her entirely. As she let Jessica slip away, the distance between them loomed larger than ever, and Sarah felt the icy fingers of desperation tighten around her heart. With Jessica's retreating figure etched in her mind, Sarah felt a surge of resistance rising within her. Maybe it was time to reclaim her own identity too, channeling her lost dreams into something creative. Art she had buried for fear and doubt began bubbling to the surface as a glimmer of hope. But did that mean turning her back on family? Or was it time to confront the walls built on fragile foundations? The ceiling felt lower, stifling as Sarah's heartbeats echoed in emptiness. What awaited her on the other side of this confrontation? Would she find the courage to face Jessica before it slipped away forever? The gravity of love and ambition weighed heavy, leaving readers aching for resolution, lingering in the uncertainty of choices yet to be made and lives hanging in the balance. The morning sun spilled light into Sarah's room, yet she felt trapped in perpetual shadow, a fitting metaphor for her life since the accident. With the echoes of Jessica's confession ricocheting in her mind, she couldn't banish the tumult that twisted deep within. Sitting on the edge of her bed, She allowed her fingertips to brush against the satin cover, an anchor to her reality. Each tiny movement reminded her of the limitations her body now enforced, yet the weight of emotional burdens felt much heavier. Her phone buzzed incessantly, notifications acting as a bothersome reminder of the mundane world outside. Friends were texting about ordinary things, the latest gossip, weekend plans, but all Sarah could focus on was the weight of unspoken words between her and Jessica. It was maddening. Each ping was a countdown to a conversation she couldn't delay any longer. Determination crept into her veins as she stood and paced the floor. It was time to confront Jessica. She imagined what she wanted to say, but then doubt curled around her resolve like a creeping vine. Would discussing their feelings expose vulnerabilities, or would it drive a wedge deeper into their already fragile relationship? In her heart, she recognized this pivotal moment. Either she could let fear dictate her actions or use it as a motivator to reclaim her narrative. Taking a deep breath, Sarah sat at her desk, hesitated, and then fished out the sketchbook she had tucked away since the accident, a remnant of her artistic side that Jessica once admired. Flipping through the pages, she found unfinished drawings, doodles reflecting dreams she feared to recognize. The mere sight of the lines she had so carefully created reignited the glimmer of ambition she thought she'd buried. The artistic sanctuary Jessica sought might not be a place, but something Sarah could cultivate from within herself. She swallowed the lump in her throat and picked up a pencil. As she began to draw, the chaotic world outside faded into silence. The nightmarish anxiety morphed into strokes of creativity. Each line felt like a thread being woven into her identity, stitching together the pieces of a self she thought had been irreparably torn. Art had always been an outlet, but now it was beginning to feel like a lifeline. Sarah realized the importance of not only claiming her voice, but also using it to address her sister's actions. That evening, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the kitchen table where they often shared meals. Jessica entered, her posture exuding both excitement and uncertainty, a stark contrast to Sarah's focused determination. As the dinner wore on, the air felt thick with unspoken words, as if both sisters were poised delicately on the edge of vulnerability. Just before the last bite of food was swallowed, Sarah finally spoke, her voice steady yet laced with an underlying urgency. "Can we talk about your plans? About the ring?" The words hung in the air, a fragile bridge that could swing either way, a confrontation teetering between an emotional reckoning and deeper betrayal. Jessica's cheeks flushed, and her fork clattered against her plate, a signal of distress, but Sarah pressed on. She refused to ignore the tension, or the heartache that had grown into a chasm demanding to be bridged. As tears pooled in Jessica's eyes, Sarah felt her own heart race. This was more than just about a ring. It was about the fragility of their bond and the fear of losing everything they had cherished. Would they break apart under the weight of these revelations, or would they rebuild something stronger? As Sarah braced for Jessica's response, the gravity of their shared history weighed heavily in the air, unresolved yet somehow inevitable. What would Jessica reveal in response? Would she break down or dig in her heels, further deepening the divide? The moment hung there, the next words a potentially explosive catalyst for change. Jessica's gaze dropped to her plate, her fingers fiddling nervously with the fork. The silence between them thickened like fog rolling into a familiar port, concealing both hopes and fears. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest, each thud shielded by a growing resolve. This was more than just a conversation about a ring. It was about loyalty, sacrifice, and the choices that had led them to this moment. "Sarah," Jessica finally whispered, her voice quaking as she met her sister's unwavering stare. The words spilled out before Jessica had a chance to collect herself. "I thought it was the right thing to do. I believed that by using the money for a vacation, I could help you escape this shadow you've been in." Since her voice faltered, the abrupt reminder of the accident clawing at the edges of their conversation. Anger sparked within Sarah, mingling with a twinge of sorrow. "You believed?" "Jessica, it's not just about what you thought was right. It was my ring. My dream, not just a price tag you could equate to a getaway." Tears filled her eyes, but fury burned brighter. "Why didn't you talk to me? Jessica's face paled as the weight of her decision crashed down like a wave. I didn't want to distress you more. You needed happiness. Something more than this. She gestured vaguely to their surroundings, but Sarah could sense the dismissal infused in that gesture. The ache of betrayal swelled within her. In that heated moment of confrontation, something strange unfolded. Sarah felt a shift. The chaos in her mind began to reorganize into clarity. Do you realize what you've done to not just my feelings but our trust? Her voice softened as she focused on her sister's expression: distress, regret, and fear, all battling for dominance. You took a part of me without asking for consent. I thought you didn't care anymore, Jessica replied, her voice barely audible. You've been so distant since the unspoken word accident hovered, echoing between them like an oppressive silence. For the first time since her world narrowed into shadows, Sarah acknowledged the truth of Jessica's statement. She had retreated further into her pain, building walls to guard against the emotional turmoil. The art that had once flowed from her soul had lain dormant like a desert spring. Maybe you're right, Sarah admitted. But that doesn't justify your decisions. You needed to trust me to share your burdens too. The layers of accusation began to peel away, revealing the raw core of their relationship: two sisters grappling with loss, but also with the prospect of rediscovering one another. The conversation twisted into something Sarah hadn't anticipated. It became less about the ring and more about their individual struggles. I feel like I've lost everything, Jessica. You think a vacation could erase that? They both sat in silence, the weight of their shared grief interwoven with the tensions of betrayal. Maybe, Jessica said slowly, the real vacation we need is not a trip, but a break from the guilt and the secrets we've kept. Secrets can't foster healing, Sarah breathed, the dawning realization igniting a flicker of hope. They were at a crossroads, and perhaps this confrontation was the catalyst for their healing journey, both as individuals and as sisters. As they lingered in their shared silence, contemplating the opportunity for honesty over the sediment of resentment, an unexpected thought flickered in Sarah's mind. Could this moment of vulnerability be the key to unlock the creativity she thought she'd lost? She glanced at the unfinished sketches that lay forgotten in the recesses of her desk. Maybe it was time to breathe life into them again, perhaps a testament to the raw edges of their truth. Jessica finally broke the tension, her voice steady but laced with vulnerability. So, what happens now? Just as Sarah prepared to answer, another question tugged at her mind. Would they face the demons together, or would past shadows loom larger than their willingness to confront them? The next step hung delicately in the air like a promise waiting to be forged into reality. Sarah drew a shaky breath, her heart racing with the gravity of the moment. She could feel her resolve solidifying, transforming the emotional whirlwind into a strong foundation from which they could rebuild. But the road wouldn't be easy, and she knew they had a long way to go. Now she began, the word tasting unfamiliar yet resolute on her tongue. We decide how we move forward from this. It was empowering to confront the truth of their situation. She felt a strange energy coursing through her, igniting a longing to create, to reclaim that which had been lost alongside her confidence and self-expression. Jessica nodded, still trembling under the gravity of their shared revelations, but now looking directly into Sarah's eyes with an urge to connect that had been absent moments ago. It was a flicker of hope between sisters, a spark igniting into something more substantial. Maybe we could start from scratch. Together, Jessica suggested carefully. What if we face our pain? Allow ourselves to grieve properly and share everything we've been holding back? The sincerity in Jessica's voice struck a chord deep within Sarah. It inspired an idea workshop, perhaps. Something to combine their strengths and put their feelings into tangible form. Let us create something art together, she proposed, her voice gaining strength with each word. It could be a mural or a series of pieces reflecting our journey, our truths. But we do it with honesty this time. No more secrets. Art? Jessica echoed, her brow furrowing slightly. But neither of us has really worked like that since exactly. Since the accident, Sarah interrupted, her pulse quickening as she boldly embraced the idea. But I think channeling all this pain, this complexity, into our art could be transformative. Together. We can tackle our demons on that canvas, in those sketches. I'll dig deep. You can help me reawaken those pieces I pushed away. Jessica's expression shifted. Hope blossomed as she considered the idea, but hesitation flickered behind her eyes. But what if it doesn't work? What if it only reminds us of everything we've lost? Then at least we face it. At least we're together, Sarah insisted, stealing her resolve. The shadows were heavy, but they were starting to lift. We either put our art out there and risk the exposure, or we remain trapped in it forever. Let our pain breathe. It's time for us both to rediscover who we are. A spark of determination ignited in Jessica's eyes as she absorbed her sister's words. You really think this will help? With every part of me, Sarah replied, a newfound strength pulsing within her. Besides, I'm not letting fear dictate my choices anymore. I want to regain my voice. All right, Jessica said, her voice stronger now. Let us do it. Together. They sat in contemplative silence for a moment, each turning over the possibilities stretching before them. The air buzzed with anticipation, and for the first time in a long time, an idea of shared dreams began to crystallize where fear had once reigned. As Sarah looked into her sister's eyes, she felt a rush of inspiration. Let us plan our first session tomorrow. We can start brainstorming ideas and then simply create. No judging, just freedom to express what we've been through, she proposed, her heart swelling with enthusiasm. Okay, Jessica confirmed, her smile emerging like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. Suddenly, though, doubt crept back in. But what if the exposure of our truth hurts us more? What if we fail? Then we'll adapt, Sarah said, her conviction unwavering. Growth doesn't come without struggle. We're confronting these feelings together now. Jessica's nod signaled the first step in their collaborative journey, one that was as daunting as it was exhilarating. But beneath the fear lay the potential for evolution, both as artists and as sisters rediscovering their bond. What they did not realize was that along the way, they would unlock uncharted territories within themselves, hidden talents, aspirations, and buried emotions that would resurface like the colors on their canvases. They prepared to embrace their creative endeavor. An unsettling thought lingered at the edges of Sarah's mind. Could this forced exposure and raw vulnerability serve as the catalyst for the demons they both feared? Would the act of creation lead them to face their deepest fears? The question hung heavy in the air, promising an uncertain yet transformative journey ahead. The morning sun streamed through the window, illuminating the small space cluttered with half-finished projects and remnants of their past. The colors of the sunrise ignited Sarah's spirit, but a knot of trepidation tightened in her stomach. Today marked the beginning of an experiment that could either rekindle their passions or unearth long-buried traumas. As Sarah arranged her art supplies, a hodgepodge of brushes, paints, and canvas scraps, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. The reflection revealed someone she barely recognized, a woman on the precipice of rediscovery, yet weighed down by lingering doubt. The once vibrant artist lurked beneath a veneer of uncertainty, her true self nearly extinguished in the shadow of the unimaginable. Jessica arrived shortly after, her energy casting a warm presence that pierced the silence of the room. Are we ready? She asked, her eagerness barely masking the apprehension flickering in her eyes. Sarah considered heavily before nodding. Together, they could face the walls of silence they had both constructed. Why don't we start by reflecting on how we felt during the hardest times? Sarah suggested, tentatively breaking the ice. Art can help us articulate feelings we struggle to voice. Her heart raced as she fought the urge to reel back her vulnerability. Jessica hesitated, but something about Sarah's already open honesty compelled her to do the same. I remember feeling trapped. Like I was screaming, but no one could hear me, she confessed, her voice trembling. Drawing inspiration from her sister's admission, Sarah felt the rush of an idea forming. Maybe we can each create a piece representing that feeling? The challenge opened up a floodgate of creativity, each moment intensifying the connection. They could translate their pain into something tangible, reclaiming their voices through art. They began to work side by side, paints flowing freely on canvas as raw emotions spilled onto the surfaces. Each brushstroke became a cathartic release. Surrounded by scattered thoughts and memories, Sarah slipped into a trance-like state, oblivious to the outside world. But then the self-doubt returned, gnawing at her mind. What if their work was nothing compared to the artists they admired? What if their shared journey ended in failure? Shaking her head, Sarah pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the warmth emanating from her sister's laughter as they reminisced about shared childhood memories intertwined with their artistic explorations. Hours seemed to evaporate, and as the sun dipped low in the sky, something remarkable emerged before them, a spectrum of colors that expressed their intertwined fears and hopes. Jessica stood back, a look of astonished disbelief painting her features. "We did this. Together." Sarah's heart swelled with a mix of pride and disbelief. This was the birth of their transformation, their healing. She suddenly grasped that this experience was not merely about confronting the past, it was also about embracing their potential to create beauty from pain and uncertainty. But lurking in the depths of that triumph was a shadow that echoed from the canvases. As darkness fell, she felt the weight of vulnerability sharpen in her spirit. Was she ready to let the world see this side of her? Was the fear of exposure finally worth the potential of liberation? Their next session loomed on the horizon, a public debut of their emotions encapsulated through their art. With newfound determination mingled with undercurrents of trepidation, Sarah turned to Jessica with fierce defiance in her voice. "We'll finish what we started. I refuse to hide anymore." Jessica's eyes mirrored her own excitement and fear, but beneath it simmered an unyielding resolve. "Tomorrow we start sharing it. Together." As they prepared to rest after a long day, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge lay ahead. Would sharing their raw vulnerability in a public space fortify their bond, or would it shatter them under the pressure of judgment? The question echoed through her mind, as unsettling as. It was invigorating, promising both destruction and creation on the path ahead. The following day dawned with a sense of urgency that hung in the air, thick and palpable. Sarah woke with a start, her mind racing as she replayed the events of the day ahead. The prospect of unveiling their artwork made her stomach churn with equal parts anticipation and dread. Beneath her emerging excitement lay a torrent of insecurities that threatened to consume her determination whole. Sipping her coffee, Sarah allowed herself to reflect on the journey thus far. The paints had offered her a kind of therapy, each color chosen for a reason, revealing layers of emotion she had buried for too long. She had shared those deep wounds with Jessica, and now, facing an audience, she would bear the weight again. It felt both liberating and terrifying. "How do you feel?" Jessica asked when she joined Sarah at the table, her own apprehension mirroring Sarah's quiet turmoil. "I feel free and terrified at the same time," Sarah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is the fear stronger?" Jessica inquired, a touch of empathy in her tone. "No," Sarah said firmly, shaking her head. "I think it's just a part of the process. I wouldn't have found this path if I didn't have something to say." Inspired by her determination, Sarah made a mental list of the elements she wanted to focus on during the presentation. She sought to convey the entirety of her journey from pain to liberation, and that meant grappling with the rawness of her emotions. She couldn't simply hide behind the beauty of her artwork. She needed to articulate the story it told. As they prepped in the studio, Sarah transformed into a commanding presence. She moved purposefully, selecting the right brush and mixing pigments with precision. It was a dance of creation and defiance, each action reminding her of the power she wielded as an artist and a survivor. "Every brushstroke is a rebellion," she thought as she worked, but as they neared the time to leave, she encountered an unexpected reminder of her past lurking in the studio, a small box containing remnants of her life before the collapse. Inside lay tokens of a happier time, letters, photos, and an engagement ring. An ashen reminder of dreams dashed felt visceral, like an unwanted ghost. As the box lay open before her, doubt crept in, threatening the clarity she had fought so hard to achieve. Would sharing this pain make her seem weak? Would it undermine the progress she had claimed? But then she remembered Jessica's confidence, their recent conversations about strength forming in vulnerability. The thought anchored her, solidifying her resolve. "I'm ready," Sarah said aloud, startling Jessica, who had just finished her own piece. "I'm ready to own my story." "Then let us go," Jessica replied, the strength in her voice igniting Sarah's spirit further. The ride to the venue was filled with a quiet tension, both women mentally preparing themselves. Jessica gripped Sarah's hand tightly, a silent vow of support in the face of their looming vulnerability. Arriving at the venue was surreal. It buzzed with energy and the palpable excitement of fellow artists. As they entered, Sarah felt the crowd's anticipation weighing down on her like an invisible cloak. This space thrummed with conversations about art and beauty, yet their significance felt daunting when juxtaposed against the chaos that had once engulfed her life. "Remember why we're doing this," Jessica said, her voice barely above a whisper as they took a moment to breathe together, a shield against the wave of self-doubt crashing inside Sarah's mind. But as the voices drifted, Sarah noticed something shifting in the air. The moment of truth was approaching. The spotlight wouldn't just shine on their art, it would illuminate their vulnerabilities, their very selves. "Are you ready to do this?" Jessica asked, eyes brimming with determination. Taking a deep breath, Sarah squared her shoulders. The knot in her stomach tightened, then loosened as a sense of purpose surged. "Yes, let us expose ourselves. It's time to show the world what we've created." As they stepped forward into the unfolding event, Sarah's resolve transformed from fear into fierce courage, but she felt echoes of uncertainty tugging at her heart. This was more than just a display, it was an unveiling, and the world was watching. What awaited them beyond those doors? Would their art cultivate understanding or stir up judgment? A new layer of vulnerability loomed ahead, and Sarah braced herself for the journey that stretched into the unknown. Stepping into the venue was like entering a new realm, one where every heartbeat felt magnified and every breath held significance. Sarah focused on the flickering lights above, her pulse sinking to the rhythm of the moment. Artists crowded the space, their unique creations demanding attention, much like her own hidden emotions clamoring to be acknowledged. Yet, beneath that pulsing excitement lay an undercurrent of dread. What if no one cared about her story? Jessica's presence by her side was a solid anchor, reminding Sarah she would not face this moment alone. As they navigated through the throng of people, she began to mentally rehearse what she wanted to express. Each step echoed her growing resolve, building a foundation of confidence fortified by the struggles she had overcome. But still, the shadow of uncertainty loomed, whispering doubts that threatened to engulf her thoughts. What if her vulnerability backfired? In the corner of the room, an older artist was passionately discussing his work. The intensity in his voice ignited something within Sarah. His unwavering conviction reminded her, if she wanted to resonate with anyone, she would need to speak her truth with ferocity. This was a turning point not just about her art, but about reclaiming her narrative. Minutes passed, morphing into an eternity as they approached the display tables. One glance at their creations ignited a fierce pride. Each piece was a manifestation of her struggles, her victories, her growth. But that pride was often fleeting, yielding to deeper questions. Was she strong enough to share the meaning behind each brushstroke? Would anyone resonate with the vulnerability she intended to display? Then the moment arrived. The host approached the podium, announcing their turn to speak. A nervous silence enveloped the room as Sarah and Jessica moved toward the stage. Heart racing, Sarah's insides churned. She could almost hear her doubts clawing their way to the surface. Just as she started to falter, a warm light fell upon them, illuminating their shared journey. "Thank you all for being here. Today, we're here to share more than just our art. We're unveiling pieces of ourselves." Jessica spoke first, her voice steady, soothing the storm within Sarah. Encouraged by her friend's strength, Sarah took the mic, the cool metal grounding her as she settled into the moment. Each stroke on canvas reflects tumultuous scars, but also the beauty of healing. "I learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a powerful act of reclamation, a way to take back control." As she spoke, their stories unfurled on the walls behind them, vividly alive, sparking conversations, urging reflections. The audience leaned forward, entranced. It was no longer just a performance, it was a shared human experience, and Sarah found courage pulsating through her, amplifying her words. What struck her most was the engagement of the crowd, nodded heads, eyes bright with understanding. Each moment she shared her truth solidified the conviction that her past did not define her, but rather fueled her transformation. She began to see her art and her story not only as a reflection of herself, but as a bridge connecting others with similar struggles. After their presentation, people approached, eager to share their impressions, their stories. Warm exchanges enveloped Sarah like a cloak of validation, easing her earlier anxieties. She felt a sudden urgency to dig deeper into her narrative, to not only tell but also live her journey fully. By the time the evening shadows cast long across the floor, Sarah understood a fundamental truth. She was just beginning to tap into her potential. Each interaction felt like a key unlocking parts of herself she had kept hidden for too long. As the night wore on, her heart raced with possibility. When the event concluded, Sarah turned to Jessica, exhilarated. This wasn't just about sharing art. It's a call to continue exploring our stories, our truths. That's right, Jessica replied, a gleam of hope igniting in her eyes. But there's still so much more to uncover. Are you ready for the next chapter of your story? The challenge echoed inside Sarah's mind, igniting a spark she hadn't realized had been dormant. She could feel the tide of change pulling her forward, unraveling a new adventure on the horizon. What revelations awaited her as she delved deeper into this journey of self-discovery? The drive back home was filled with a buoyant energy that made her heart race. Sarah felt as though she had just crossed a threshold into a new reality, transforming her doubts into arrows of ambition aimed at uncharted territories. Each turn of the wheel seemed to amplify her excitement. A transformation was brewing. I can't believe how many people connected with what we shared. Jessica broke the silence, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. You were incredible up there. Thanks, Jess, Sarah replied, her voice layered with sincerity. But behind her smile, a storm of thoughts brewed. Why had her past resonated so deeply? Was it enough to just share her story, or did it demand more? The questions danced in her mind, colliding with her newfound confidence. Later that evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, a canvas stretched in front of her, blank and beguiling. The pristine surface mocked her with its emptiness, echoing the labyrinth of her thoughts. She could feel the weight of expectation creeping in like fog. How could she fill it with more than just colors, but with the depth of her experiences? She dipped her brush into the paint, hesitant at first, doubting what she had to say next. The flicker of her phone interrupted her reflection. A message from Jessica appeared. Let's plan a series of exhibitions. We can dive deeper into our narratives. This is just the beginning, Sarah. The excitement of the prospect thrilled her, yet another layer of complexity unfolded within. The thought of deeper engagement through her art tugged at her resolve. If she exposed more of herself, would she still be able to stand in the light? Or would the shadows of the past flicker back, demanding attention at the most inopportune moments? With renewed determination, Sarah began to paint, each stroke merging with questions. Why did her past feel so relevant now? What if her vulnerability served as a mirror, reflecting not just her pain, but the universal struggle for healing? As colors blended on the canvas, she confronted her internal battles, a raw and visceral acknowledgement of who she had been and who she was becoming. Days passed into nights as Sarah became engrossed in her artistic exploration. The work, a blend of abstract shapes and vivid hues, was infused with her thoughts, each stroke imbued with lessons learned, each swirl representing tumultuous emotions she had yet to truly process. Yet something gnawed at her. The deeper she delved, the more she questioned the integrity of her expressions. Was she simply channeling pain, or was she preparing for a cathartic release? She began researching art therapy techniques, grappling with the idea that perhaps sharing the complexities of her journey through structured frameworks could channel her vulnerability positively. The revelation sparked something within her. By embracing her story fully, she could help others while also severing ties with the shadows that clung stubbornly to her soul. Eventually, she drafted a proposal for an exhibition titled Layers of Growth. The concept circled back to her truth, embracing her vulnerabilities rather than shying away from them. Every piece would represent not just her pain, but the triumph of transformation over adversity. It became a mission, a way to merge her art with her passion for healing. With each call she made to prospective galleries, uncertainty prickled her thoughts. Would they understand the significance of her journey? Was it too personal or, worse, not compelling enough to resonate? The inner tension served as fuel, igniting a fire within her to push past the self-imposed boundaries. As she hung up the phone after a conversation with a gallery owner, Sarah felt invigorated yet daunted. "This is the direction I've been longing for," she whispered to herself, staring at her latest creation. But the inkling of doubt still lingered. Had she truly begun to confront the innermost parts of her story, or was she skirting around the surface? That night, she drifted into sleep with her thoughts swirling, the dreams featuring echoes of the past and hints of an uncertain future. As dawn broke, illuminating the room, a single word pulsed in her mind: expose. What layers of herself was she yet to unveil? The next morning, she opened a new canvas, feeling an urgent need to confront the most pressing question: how would revealing her truth transform her, not just as an artist, but as a person? What dark corners remained untouched, waiting to be flooded with her newfound light? The morning sun washed over Sarah, painting her thoughts in bright, unforgiving light. She could feel the weight of her resolve solidifying into something tangible. Today was not just about painting, it was about bravery, about unearthing her story in a way that could transform her art and herself. With determination, she approached the canvas, where her paintbrush awaited, promising liberation. As she set to work, she envisioned the layers of her past that needed to be laid bare: the echoes of family expectations, the pressure to conform, the relationships that had shaped her journey. Each swirl and curve would represent a piece of her history, a thread in the fabric of her identity. But with each stroke, the familiar tendrils of doubt crept back in. Would exposing these fragments of her life invite healing or invite judgment? This internal struggle rumbled silently beneath the surface, urging her to dig deeper. The act of creation felt perilous, yet utterly necessary. She recalled the moments when she felt most vulnerable: the arguments that erupted over trivial matters, the silence that followed her departure from relationships that once meant everything. What had they taught her? Growth often bloomed from the seeds of turmoil, even if the process was frustrating and painful. As a strategy to confront these shadows, Sarah decided to incorporate mixed media into her latest work. She began collecting mementos from her past: ticket stubs, letters, and photographs that held stories of both joy and heartache. Each piece connected to a specific experience, each preserving emotions she had tried, sometimes unsuccessfully, to store away. Finding this unexpected connection to her vulnerability invigorated her creative process. The layers of paper she glued onto the canvas felt like a tangible representation of her life experiences, some bright, some faded, but all undeniably hers. It also sparked a deeper reflection. Was she ready to reveal these intimate fragments? Would allowing people a glimpse into her struggles empower her or leave her exposed to scrutiny? Reaching out to Jessica after a day steeped in self-reflection, Sarah explained her idea. "I feel like I have to do this, Jess," she confided. "But what if I open up those old wounds in front of people? What if I'm not strong enough to deal with it?" Jessica's voice offered reassurance. "You're stronger than you think. Your story isn't just about you, it's about everyone who has ever faced struggles and come out on the other side. This could be a genuine way to help others connect with their own vulnerabilities, turning pain into purpose." The thought reframed Sarah's apprehension. Perhaps this was not merely a personal endeavor, it could resonate beyond her individual experience. That realization ignited a spark within her spirit, pulling her back to the canvas with newfound vigor. She was not alone in her journey of healing. Through vulnerability, she was forming a bridge of connection to others battling their own journeys. With renewed confidence, Sarah layered her memories onto the canvas, embracing every high and low. The process became less about avoiding scrutiny and more about liberation. As colors merged and textures blended, she felt as if she was shedding the last vestiges of doubt, welcomed by an emerging clarity. By exposing her past, she was crafting a pathway to healing for herself and inviting her viewers to take the journey alongside her. As the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, casting shadows in the corners of her studio, Sarah stood back to appreciate her creation. Yet a new discomfort peeked through the otherwise exhilarating experience. Were there deeper truths lurking beyond the visible layers, waiting to be chronicled? With a sense of anticipation threaded through her thoughts, she realized she was not simply unveiling her past, she was beginning to face a critical decision. Could she push her exploration further, confronting the most painful fracture within her history? Would she dare to capture that rawness, that moment of betrayal that still haunted her? As she contemplated the canvas, the intensity of her thoughts surged forward. The layers of pain weren't just past experiences. They could reveal possibilities for reconciliation and, perhaps, a profound empowerment that had eluded her for far too long. The canvas before her shimmered with potential, but one question remained pressing. Would she have the courage to confront every forgotten moment hidden within the layers of her life? The days that followed became a transformative whirlwind for Sarah. Each day dawned with renewed purpose as she channeled her emotions into the canvas, weaving her past into visual narrative stories she had long buried beneath layers of insecurity and doubt. As she painted, she felt a fortifying sense of resilience building within her. The colors on her palette began to resonate not only with her struggles, but also with the victories of self-acceptance. The act of creation morphed into an assertion of autonomy. She was no longer just a woman altered by circumstances, but an artist reclaiming her narrative. There was a pivotal afternoon when Sarah confronted that deeply rooted pain. A canvas sprawled before her, blank but daunting. She recalled the sting of betrayal. The emptiness Jessica once filled with envy now transformed into a battle against her own feelings of inadequacy. She dipped the brush into a striking red, swirling it across the canvas, releasing frustration in every stroke. The catharsis felt electric. With each movement, her sense of power and autonomy surged. This was Sarah not just reacting, but actively constructing the narrative of her life, no longer a passive participant in destinies dictated by others. A week later, as she prepared for the unveiling of her work at her first exhibition, her nerves were laced with excitement and trepidation. The walls of the gallery transformed into a sanctuary for her art, a collection of her journey. Each piece represented various stages of recovery, hinting at despair and illuminating the dawn of self-realization. But beyond individual expression, her artwork beckoned others to join her in confronting their own vulnerabilities. This was not merely an exhibition, it was an invitation for collective healing through personal truth. As guests filtered into the gallery, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Jessica was beside her, a picture of support amidst the whirlwind of emotions. The night unfolded with validations that further fortified Sarah's courage. People connected with her work, engaging in conversations layered with admiration and shared experiences. "What inspired you to lay everything bare?" one guest asked, eyes sparkling with curiosity. "I realized that vulnerability isn't a weakness," Sarah replied, her voice steadier as the moment unfolded, but a source of strength. "Art became my way to confront my past, not just the pain, but the hope that accompanies it." Each interaction felt like adding a brushstroke to her evolving masterpiece. She achieved a significant personal victory. She had exposed her truths, transforming them into shared experiences. In the days that followed the exhibition, Sarah received unexpected validation from industry experts, several of whom expressed interest in collaborating on future projects. There was a deep sense of satisfaction in knowing her story resonated beyond her own experience. Her art began to serve as a guiding light for others navigating their storms. Jessica, too, blossomed in the wake of their collaboration. The sisters entered into therapy together, using the medium of art to mend their bond. Their relationship, once shadowed with jealousy and misunderstanding, transitioned into a supportive partnership where vulnerability yielded transparency rather than betrayal. They envisioned future joint projects, ready to take on new creative challenges with the strength gleaned from their shared vulnerability. As Sarah surveyed the completed pieces in her studio, she reflected on the profound transformation she experienced. She was not merely a nurse or an artist. She was a catalyst for change, a woman who conquered adversity through understanding and integrity. "I've reclaimed my voice," she marveled softly to herself, her heart swelling with pride. This journey tightened the tapestry of her identity, each thread representing her scars, her triumphs, her unwavering spirit. The realization was grounding. She discovered a genuine passion for facilitating others' healing through their stories and art, completing her last painting. Ownership of her journey hung palpably in the air. She had unbolted the door to her past, indeed, but more than that, she held the key to future possibilities. For the first time in a long time, Sarah encountered pure, unwavering confidence, the kind that carved paths and forged connections. In the mirror above her easel, a woman with purpose gazed back, one who embraced every facet of her story without shame or reservation. "This is who I am," she whispered, feeling the warmth of acceptance envelop her like sunlight breaking through clouds. The chapter closed on a tumultuous past, but a new saga was on the horizon, one filled with endless possibilities, unwavering connections, and radiant art that would continue to echo her journey, inspiring others to confront their own shadows. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm and keep this impactful content alive. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.